On today's episode of Luthorville, we answer the question, do you need a special kind of driver's license in order to tow a tiny house?
Many individuals who are just learning about tiny houses and gargantuan fifth-wheel RV trailers are justifiably intimidated by the size, and they nervously ask, can I drive this with a regular driver's license? Now, legally speaking, this is never a simple yes or no question. The only truly accurate answer is maybe. It depends on what state you live in, how your vehicles are registered, and the weight of your truck and trailer. All states have different rules and regulations for the types of licenses they issue and what those licenses permit you to drive. In addition, every state also has numerous categories of driver's license endorsements which provide additional permissions for different vehicle configurations. Now, the highest level of driving authority is possessed by those individuals who have earned a Class A version of a commercial driver's license, also known as a CDL. Now, personally, I went to truck driving school and earned a Class A CDL out here in sunny California. In fact, this right here is the very truck that I used at Alliance School of Trucking in lovely Chatsworth, California. That is the vehicle that I took with me to the DMV in February of 2016 in order to earn my Class A commercial driver's license. Now, my commercial driver's license has no restrictions, plus a motorcycle endorsement. Altogether, my CDL legally permits me to drive cars, motorcycles, buses, big rigs with air brakes, farm vehicles, military trucks, delivery trucks, cement trucks, any kind of trucks. Plus, I can tow livestock trailers, commercial trailers, and fifth-wheel RV trailers, including a tiny house. In other words, I've been licensed to legally drive just about anything, regardless of what state I'm living in or driving through. But do you need a special license in your state? Legally, maybe. Ethically? Yes, absolutely. Conscientious citizens will want to be trained and properly understand how to drive something that large down the road, regardless of the requirements legally. Decent Americans would never attempt to drive such huge vehicles on public streets without learning how to do it safely. So, now that your conscience has spoken up and you've become morally obligated to improve your driving skills, how do you know what kind of license you need in your state? Well, personally, I suggest you follow in my footsteps and get a Class A CDL, because you'll become licensed to drive everything. But maybe you don't have the resources of time and money to invest into a Class A, and you'd rather just get trained for a lesser license. What are your options? In a word, research. Look up the laws. As of 2016, states with special license provisions for RV trailers include California, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Hawaii, Illinois, Kansas, Maryland, Michigan, North Carolina, New Mexico, Nevada, New York, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. That's a lot of states. That's almost half the country. Plus, I've only mentioned states where those stipulations apply to recreational vehicles. There are no stipulations for commercial vehicles. When do you need a CDL? What are the stipulations for requiring one? Unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation on the internet from uneducated people incorrectly answering these questions. I've seen all kinds of weird and crazy and inaccurate advice from people who don't even have a CDL and have no idea what they're talking about. Some people think you need a CDL when a vehicle has air brakes. Other people will say you need a CDL only if you drive a vehicle for a commercial job. Some will claim you need a CDL if a truck has a manual transmission. Some say the tire size is a determining factor, and you need a CDL if the tires are over a certain diameter. Some folks insist you don't need a CDL if a commercial trailer is empty and not carrying any cargo. Most of those statements are completely false. Some of those statements are partially true, and none of those statements are 100% correct or accurate. Don't listen to those people. You might get ticketed, arrested, and have your vehicle impounded. Generally speaking, requiring a Class A CDL is based upon the registration of the vehicle and the weight of the vehicle in question. That's all. The weight and the registration of the vehicles, nothing more. Well, and sometimes the number of axles, depending upon what state you live in. But let's not confuse things by getting into all that. Okay, the primary factors are usually weight and registration. I turned into Mike Tyson. Now, what do I mean by registration? Well, not everyone realizes this, but you can register vehicles with your State Department of Motor Vehicles in different ways. Let's say, for example, you buy a big rig to tow your tiny house. If you go to the DMV and you register that truck as a commercial vehicle, you will legally require a CDL to drive it. If you register that very same truck as a recreational vehicle, you will not need a CDL to drive it. But you might need endorsements depending upon the state you live in. Understand? So, the type of registration on your vehicle is very important, because once you register a vehicle as commercial, then the weight of that vehicle always becomes a factor in requiring a CDL. There are 3 terms you need to understand when discussing these weights. The gross vehicle weight rating, or GVWR. The gross combined weight rating, which is the GCWR, and the gross vehicle weight, which is the GVW. Now, the GVWR is not the physical weight of the vehicle. Rather, it is the potential weight the vehicle can carry. The GCWR is the sum of the GVWR of the truck and the GVWR of all attached trailers. The GVW is the actual physical weight of the vehicle. When do these weights determine that you need a CDL? Well, simply put, if your single vehicle GVWR exceeds 26,000 pounds, you need a Class B CDL to legally drive that commercial vehicle. If your GCWR exceeds 26,000 pounds, you need a Class A license to legally drive that vehicle and trailer. Make sense? So, if your GVWR or GCWR exceeds 26,000 pounds, you need a CDL. Probably. If your vehicle isn't registered as an RV, but you might still need a special endorsement depending upon the state that you live in. Yeah, it's all very confusing. There are not many nationwide rules that apply to every single situation. Like I've said over and over again, these rules all vary from state to state, so be sure you do some research. The advice you get from a Florida resident is probably completely wrong for those of you living in Idaho. That brings up another important factor: safety. Safety is far more important than the letter of the law. There are some people out there who purchase trailers rated to a GVWR of 12,000 pounds, and they place an 11,000 pound tiny house on it. Now, while that may be technically legal, it's extremely irresponsible in terms of physics, engineering, and ethics. By pushing the physical limitations of a trailer to the absolute limit, you're inviting dangerous accidents due to metal fatigue, from twisted frames, cracked welds, bent axles, the very first time you hit a big pothole. Now, the same thing applies to the trucks themselves. Okay, people get a little Chevy 2500 rated to tow 12,000 pounds and drag an 11,000 pound trailer with them. Now, these folks may not be breaking the law, but they're constantly stressing out the drivetrain and transmission by running at 95% capacity all the time.
Let's put it in very simple terms. This is a typical car hauler trailer. This is the kind of trailer that most tiny homes are built upon. These can usually hold around 12,000 pounds, and this is what they look like underneath. This is a typical gooseneck trailer. Now, the goosenecks, they can hold twice as much weight. They can hold around 25,000 pounds. And this is what a gooseneck looks like in the underlying structure. So, ask yourself, which foundation would you rather build a house on? Would you like to get your CDL so that you can use that gooseneck trailer? Or would you rather keep your regular license and use that car hauler?
Pulling a tiny house means you're literally subjecting that structure to 55-mile-per-hour hurricane-force winds and 5.0 earthquakes every single time you go down the road. Do you really want to tow that kind of structure on a foundation which can barely support it? Do you really want to trust those conditions to a truck which is constantly pushing the limit of its performance characteristics? As I stated in the beginning, show some consideration for the safety of your fellow Americans on the road. Get professional training and learn to properly drive large vehicles. You want a tiny house? Go to trucking school, get trained, and get your Class A. You owe it to yourself. Just think of it as another facet of your project, another learning opportunity, and an essential part of your great adventure.